Welcome back. It's Tim and Julie Harrison. This is your favorite, you know it is, daily real estate coaching and trading podcast. Julie has prepared a kick butt outline for all of us today. Smart agents don't wait for rates to drop. They create the deal. Now, yes, we know interest rates are, historically high right now. Hasn't been rates that haven't been rates this high for decades, but I got great news for all of you. Rates only partially matter, and we're going to help you work through some of the, I think, emotional resistance you might be having to create more transactions because of the higher interest rates. I know that sounds kind of strange, but here I'll give you a little secret. When you generate, you don't have to tolerate, which means if you can generate more conversations with people that are maybe frustrated by interest rates and don't know how to solve the problem, in other words, customers who are saying, I'll wait on the sidelines because interest rates are too high, but you know how to move past the interest rate objection, you're going to be dominating the real estate market because you know how to do transactions that other agents don't. And I've got some more good news for you. Everything that we're reading, every indication is that interest rates are going to drop. And I'm not going to get on one of my soapboxes, or at least I'll try not to, but it does appear, Julie's laughing at me because I usually fail whenever I say I'm not going to do it. I almost always get on a soapbox, but I'm going to challenge myself. There's every reason to believe that Julie and I's predictions about this being the start of a generational housing boom are playing out, not as we'd predicted in the order in which we thought they would, but I'm suggesting to all of you, open your mind to the fact that we are going to see I would say, revolution in housing finance like we've never seen before. We're going to see more opportunities for real estate practitioners to help more people and frankly make more money than we've ever seen in our entire lives. And I'll just start out by saying this. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are going to come out of conservatorship. You're going to see monthly payments drop, giving a foreshadowing as to Julie's points that we're about to talk about. Monthly payments drop because of the junk fees and the garbage that have been added to people's monthly payments are going to start to erode because of essentially a lot of the massive changes that are about to happen for real estate. We have done 3 or 4 podcasts on our prediction that it was going to be Trump has frankly talked about this in different administrative officials. Oh, don't be triggered just because I said the president's name. Just open your mind. You're a real estate practitioner. Your job is not to be a Republican or a Democrat and to be partisan. Your job is to be a Republicrat so you can be of service to everybody. And here's the moral of the story. What Trump is about to do for housing, what we were predicting he was going to do, is if anything, Julie and I were too conservative with what our predictions were. He is coming out with suggestions about what to do with housing that okay, here's one. They're talking about making it so there's going to be a movement to get rid of property taxes on your house. Now, I'm sure there'll be some carve outs. You have to have been a certain age and all the rest of it. Maybe who knows what. But imagine that. You have your house paid off. You're still having to pay state taxes on it. Property taxes on it. You don't have any kids in the schools. You don't have any. Are there other ways the schools can be funded? Yes. And all these other things. And so I actually, again, not meaning to get on a soapbox, but I actually did some searching about this morning, Julie, in preparation for today's show using AI. And I was asking how many states have no property taxes. And the answer was 0. All states have property taxes, but then it gave me a list of the states that had the lowest property taxes. And then I asked, why do states charge property taxes, especially on houses that are paid off? I mean, they paid for their property taxes for 30 years, right? Shouldn't there be at some point you just own the damn thing?
Some kind of relief, yeah.
Because if you don't pay your property taxes, you lose your house, even if it's paid off. It's horrible, but it's true. And it said, and I asked, why are we still doing the property tax game? And he said, property taxes go to paying for schools and firefighters and all the things that we all know to be true. And then I said, okay, well, duh. So are there any other schemes that have been adopted in other countries to avoid having to pay property taxes? Oh yeah, tons. There's many countries that are first world countries have affluence who don't charge property taxes. They do use taxes. In other words, sales taxes and different forms of sales taxes. Wouldn't you rather have a tax? We all have to pay taxes, right? So wouldn't you rather have your taxes be based on your use of it? A voluntary tax versus an involuntary tax. And so what AI told me was the reason that property taxes are a thing is because it's more consistent, it's more predictable than use taxes. That's what basically it said. In other words, you're trapped, you have to pay it. You can't just Like tariffs are now going to make imported cars 15% more expensive. If you're, from Europe, 15% more expensive means a lot of times it's going to make the car too expensive, and you're going to what? Buy something that's produced domestically. That's a choice you can make. I don't want to pay the taxes. I'm going to buy something else. But with property taxes, it doesn't work like this. All of these conversations are happening now for the first time in all of our lifetimes, where all the presumptions we made about owning real estate and owning homes and the expenses associated with it, every single one of those little sacred cows are being challenged now. And that to me is incredibly exciting, because we do not have a property value problem. We have a payment problem. And the payment problem is only partially because of the interest rates. It's also because of all the garbage fees that we've all just come to accept that are part of owning a home. So open your mind as we go through these points. By the way, if you want these notes, which you will, we're only here for 30 minutes for you guys today. Julie has 4 pages of amazing points. If you want these notes, just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, and that is our daily newsletter. We have over 30,000 people in the newsletter. It is really a creative outlet for Julie and I. You love the podcast. You won't believe the great content we create for the newsletter. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. Julie, hopefully I didn't step on any of your great points.
No, all good. Yes. And I for one, think of what a game changer if the property tax went away on rental property. That would be life-changing.
Okay, you're going to get me going again. So we have a house
Sorry.
that we've been married for 34 years. So I'll give you guys for example. We have a house that we bought our 3rd year in real estate. It is in Columbus, Ohio. And the house now is worth $400,000. And Julie and I are going on our little walk the other day, and the house is paid off. Remember I said that? And I didn't know, because Julie manages our property managers. And I asked her what the property taxes was on that house. And she said, close to $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
What? And I got to thinking, how many houses do we have? How much money are we paying in property taxes?
It's insane.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're paying in property taxes.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have to pay in property taxes, we could go to investing in other things, or donating to our church, or donating to wherever the hell else we wanted to do. It's ghastly how much we've all just, okay, I guess we have to pay the taxes now. It's
but think about I think about my parents, they're retired, and it's great that their house is worth more, but along with that came a huge boatload of property tax, and and their house is paid off too.
And the argument that, okay, here's fun, a little parallel, but it's still interesting. Do you guys remember the EV mandate, where the governments had all passed these rules that by, I think it was 2035, a certain percent of all new cars being sold on the road had to be full EV, or at least hybrids? Well, it turns out that was a really crappy idea, because not everyone, and by numbers, very few people actually want a full electric car. Just is what it is. I'm not arguing for or against. It just is what it is. They don't sell. They practically made Porsche broke. I'm a car nerd, so I know some stupid facts about all
resale.
this. Yeah, they're horrible resale. Nobody wants them. When your EV is, however old it is going to brick. It's just going to be something you're going to dispose of. Anyway, lots of problems with EVs. People don't want them. People aren't buying them. People want gas engines, or people want hybrids. Hybrids probably where they're going to go. So all these governments were like, screw these big, this is how it was going on for years. In Europe especially, you're going to all manufacturers, Volkswagen, Porsche, Audi, whatever you are, you're going to be making all hybrid or electric cars by this particular year. And the manufacturers are going like, you're making us broke because nobody wants to buy these damn things. And so guess what happened? And, even in like California, these other states that were being progressive, they're trying to be forward thinking, and they're moved to making cars that were not going to have any emissions, right? Well, we looked at the facts. You're bankrupting companies. You're making it so that you're trying to force manufacturers to produce things that people don't want to buy. People are starting to buy used cars. That's the reason in many markets, used car prices have gone up. And what happened is the governments around the world are coming out and saying, well, you know what? Turns out that was a stupid idea. Trying to force everybody to buy an electric car, and bankrupting manufacturers, and how all these people fearful of losing jobs. It turns out it was a really bad idea. Porsche comes out with an announcement the other day. The president or the CEO of Porsche said, our business model doesn't work anymore. Porsche said this. And they have for years been one of the number one luxury car brand in the world. And they're saying, what we were doing doesn't work anymore. because now we are struck with having to retool everything, remanufacture, and get back to making ICE and internal combustion engines, blah, 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 blah. How does this relate to our topic today? I'm not exactly sure, but all I'm trying to trying to get you guys to think, Julie's rolling her eyes, all I'm trying to get you to just encapsulate or to consider is the very fact that a lot of the things that we just roll over, here's the loop, Julie. A lot of the things we just roll over and accept in life because we're told to, because the big, smart people and
good for us.
good for us, they are full of crap. And at the end of the day, market forces are proving out what people actually want. And we're at that point. So where the car industry is now, where they're getting back to the reality that market forces are ultimately going to dictate what they make and what people buy. Housing's about to go through the same thing. See the loop there I just did?
That was very good.
And real estate is what we're starting to have hard looks at in the industry and politically are all the absolute, I was about to use a bad word, junk fees that have been normalized in a real estate transaction, from closing costs to title
Even
insurance.
private mortgage insurance, the whole
What
thing.
a scam, honestly.
There's no reason that a closing disclosure should be more than one page.
I mean, look at all the things that are being charged.
That's what I'm saying.
When was the last time you ordered a closing table and anybody says, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Or why is this being backed into my payment? Do you guys realize when you look at the interest rate, how much garbage fees are packed into an interest rate? There's the interest rate, then there's the actual interest rate.
You don't get to
all
see
of
that.
these things. How many people are getting paid? How many different little industries are making tons and tons of money just because we've rolled over and just accepted the garbage fees? So what's happening now is, and we're seeing it happen in real time, we're part of a monumental historic moment in housing, as we're seeing all of those things are being, it doesn't make sense that consumers are being forced to pay this and pay the other thing. And the people that are not going to get paid as a result of this massive housing reform, we think it's going to be called Make Housing Great Again, by the way. But we're going to start hearing in the news, you guys will hear this, the American dream is to own a home again. That's what it was for generations, like forever. And we're going to go back to people saying that. People for the last 20 or 30 years 20 years haven't said that, but now they're going to start saying it again. And the way to make housing more affordable isn't because houses are too expensive, because housing is going to become more expensive. It's to make the payments lower. And yes, interest rates have to fall, but the other thing has to fall is we have to cut all of the junk fees out of obtaining a mortgage, and frankly, a mortgage payment. And that's what's going to be happening. So pay attention in the news. And when you hear somebody come out and say, interest rates are going to go up if Fannie and Freddie come out of conservatorship, that is somebody that's still feeding at the trough of junk fees. When you hear people that are talking against this revolution in real estate that's starting on the mortgage side, it's because they're benefiting from the existing structure of it. If you don't believe me, I'm not being political. If you don't believe me, research it yourself. Find out, write down the talking head on whatever channel you're watching or whatever podcast you're listening to, write down their name and then go and research what they do for a living, find out whose boards they're on, find out all the things. And you're going to almost always find that their opinions are based on their own personal financial gain. That's what I found when I was researching all this starting about 2 years ago. All right, Julie. So hopefully you can get us back on track.
That's okay. Well, so what we've been talking about is not just the interest that affects the payment, right? And to your point, yes, house prices are going to keep going up. It's not the price that we're talking about. We're talking about the payment. Now, a lot of what you mentioned is going to take a while to play out. All of those changes, especially with regards to how states handle property taxes, because all the states are different. So that's something to watch, certainly. And we're all going to have some impact from those types of changes. But meanwhile, you actually do have more control of the interest rate than you think. You've got to stop saying, oh, I'll get back in the real estate game when rates are back towards 6 or 5 or whatever. You've got to stop saying and allowing your buyers to say, I'm not going to do anything until rates come down less than 6.5. We are dealing with right now on this day, 6.7%. It's been give or take around there for a while. It may be like that for a few more months. It could be like that for 6 more months. It's going to come down, but why would you wait? Because everybody listening has a pipeline of buyers who do want to buy, but maybe they're waiting on rates. You don't have to wait is the point. So point number one, you can achieve. So today's show really is about don't wait for rates to drop. create your own deals. That's what smart agents do. Now, you don't have to know how to do it like a mortgage lender does, like an originator does, but you should be able to talk the talk. For example, what about assumables? So that's one of our
Assumable,
favorite
but
assumable
assumable
mortgages.
mortgage. Let's talk about that, okay?
Yes.
Because you have a lot of great notes. And by the way, if you guys want Julie's notes, just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. But I'll summarize assumables for you. Now, this will boggle your brains, but this is actually how it works. And if it's, and I, did Julie identify this? Yes, you did. So FHA loans, VA loans, USDA loans, and some conventional loans, if they'll be assumable with release, but the government-backed loans, FHA, VA, USDA loans,
Almost all those three categories are almost all 100% assumable. So if you know you've got one of those, or your next listing has one of those, or your buyer's looking for something like that, those three categories almost always are assumable.
okay, but
Conventional, you
Julie,
have to check on, and in the notes, I have how to do that.
they don't know what assumables are. We're
Okay.
assuming. All right. So assumable mortgages is where someone has an existing fixed rate mortgage for 30 years. Let's say I'm just making up the numbers. Let's say they've had the mortgage for 6 years. And let's say the house is now $100,000 in equity in it. Their mortgage is assumable usually with release. Always with release. So you can actually, and a lot of, here's an unfair listing advantage you could have when you're pre-qualifying folks that have houses to sell with mortgages. Ask what kind of mortgage they have, especially if it's an expired seller. You then will be able to explain to the seller that you will be able to show the prospective buyers that their mortgage is assumable with this lower interest rate, which will directly make their house more appealing to prospective buyers. So let's say, for example, there's 100,000 in equity. Let's say the house is worth $500,000. There's a $400,000 mortgage balance, and let's say there's a 25-year term left on it because there was originally a 30-year fixed at 3.5%. The new buyer pays the seller the 100,000 in equity, and then the buyer then will essentially, it's a very simple process. It's not even apply. Apply is you're technically applying to assume the mortgage, but it's not as nearly as onerous as getting a new mortgage in the first place.
But I think you're trying to say you still have to qualify.
You have to qualify, but it's not the same process as qualifying for if you're a buyer and you're trying to go qualify for a loan. Yeah. Assuming a loan is actually quite simple by comparison. So what's going to happen is you're going to cash the seller out of their equity, and no, this is not owner financing. No, this is not owner financing. The old seller is no longer on the loan. They're essentially, the simplest way of thinking of this is they're taking the old seller off that loan and they're putting you on that loan, and that's now your mortgage. So you're assuming it at 25 years. With 25 years left, you're assuming it at 3.5%. You guys get it? That's an assumable mortgage. And
your seller does get paid off like normal. They are no longer part of the deal. It's a normal closing. There's nothing weird about it.
And commissions are paid the same way.
That's right.
So you can actually do an assumable mortgage. You personally can to buy investment properties or buy a home yourself, but you got to know how to look for them. And then, we teach you in Premier Coaching how to go through the process of helping the consumer go through the assumable mortgage process. It's pretty damn simple. But again, listing tools, something that's going to give you a huge advantage. All right, Julie, next point, step 2 is review. Okay, we already talked about that. All right, next major point is listing agent strategy. What do you mean by that?
Well, this was a long point because it was about assumables.
Yeah.
So that's actually a micro point for that is in the instructions, if they get the newsletter, they can look up exactly the steps to dealing with assumables.
That's hilarious. I just reading your notes now. I glanced at these yesterday, but I didn't realize she actually gave you guys the step-by-step on how to do an assumable mortgage in the notes. So you better sure as heck be subscribing to the Harris Real Estate Daily newsletter. All right, point number 2, Julie.
Real point number 2, rate buy downs. Buyers or builders can pay points up front to lower the interest rate for a set period or permanently. Common structures are 2-1 buy downs, where year 1 is 2% lower, year 2 is 1% lower, and then year 3, it adjusts to whatever the going rate is at year 3. Now, this is a very common strategy that builders do. They will qualify you at a 2% under the going rate as your entry interest rate, okay, which of course affects your payments. And then it adjusts a little bit up the second year, and then it settles in on the third year. Now you can still refinance if rates go down in 6 months. You can still do that. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. You can also do a permanent buy down, lower interest rate for a full 30-year term by paying points up front. Now, here's a strategy for you. Let's say that your buyer's planning on putting 20% down. They have good credit, they have good ratios, they have a good job, everything else is in alignment. maybe the strategy is to not put 20% down, to use 5% to buy down the rate and lock in a low 30-year fixed rate. You're just paying that up front to buy, essentially you're buying a lower monthly payment. You don't have to do that through a builder, though you could. That's a builder strategy as well. Any buyer on any property can do that. How many of you guys listening right now, that's the first time you've ever heard of that as a strategy to lock in a lower interest rate? And you can spend as much as you could buy it down 2 or 3% less.
Well, let's say you're going on a listing appointment for an expired listing. And let's say that price, condition, location are all in alignment, but there's just a lot of homes for sale. And the seller doesn't necessarily want to just basically drop the payment and be the cheapest thing on the market.
Let's just,
yeah, right. Sorry. So what you could do, but you do have to do, so that you pose to the seller a choice, and the seller is motivated. So Mr. Seller, we can lower the price by 25 or let's say $25,000. Or what we can do is we can keep the payment the same. But what we can do is we can essentially offer to the buyer that you're going to set aside, $25,000 or $10,000 to make it so they can buy down their interest rate on their mortgage, and then go and do some homework, talk to your loan officer and ask the loan officer for the term. So if someone comes to you with a 30-year fixed rate, or they want a 30-year fixed rate, the existing rate is 6.5% or whatever, how much money do they have to give you to get it down to this rate, and show the payments? Or you can do a 723 where the initial interest rate is lower. Be creative. But in this market, what you can do for your sellers is you can give them the option of offering at list price, Mr. Buyer. My seller is going to set aside $25,000 for all your closing costs, discount points, and all that stuff, so you can actually have an interest rate. And here's a sample rate sheet of what you might want to have. Or if you want to be super aggressive, in some markets you have to be, then what you do is you lower the price and you get the seller. So maybe you want a $25,000 price reduction. You lower it by $12,500, and the seller then sets $12,500 aside to help the buyer buy down their closing costs, their points, and all the rest of it. Again, you need to show payments with, I just skipped your point.
No. I'm saying you can skip the next one because it's more for investors.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry to break your train of thought.
No problem. So you just show essentially what the payment's going to be. Because remember, guys, listen to what your coach or future coach is saying right now, because it's the truth. People do not care about the price. Oh, clutching your pearls. They care about the payment. Yes. Unless they're paying cash, right? But even then, they care about the payment. That's what people care about. That we do not have a overinflated housing market. We have a overinflated junk fee market on real estate, essentially on the mortgage process. And we have essentially a overinflated interest rate environment, which I don't know if you guys are paying attention to it, but Fannie Freddie came out and said that by the end of this year, they're expecting interest rates to fall by a substantial amount. And frankly, if there's a little shakeup over at the Fed, which it sounds like it's going to happen, we're also going to see interest rates fall even more. So payments are going to fall, which will be make it so then, obviously we're going to see a lot of activity. We always, when talking about payments, we talk about buyers, but remember, a lot of the buyers out there also have houses to sell. So when we talk about a buyer's payment, always remember, probably 50% of the time, at least in your marketplace, a buyer actually also has a house to sell. So there's multiple transactions that will come. I'm very excited.
Always think of both sides, right? So as a listing agent, it's really valuable to know if that seller has an assumable mortgage, because that makes your listing far more competitive than anything else that's on the market. That's going to be the first house I want to see if I'm a buyer or I'm a buyer's agent, assuming that they understand what an assumable is. Okay. But also look at it from the buyer's standpoint. So all of these things, I just wanted to interject here because we're talking about sellers paying for closing costs or buying down the rate or what have you. Okay. So whether you're on the buyer side asking for that, or you're on the listing side and you're offering that, make sure you're doing net sheets, number one. So the seller, if you're going to do this, say, instead of a price adjustment, that's still money coming out of the seller's pocket. So don't just throw these things around without figuring out the math behind it. Now, we're in a very equity-rich situation in this country right now, so there should be plenty of ample opportunity, with a few exceptions, for sellers to be able to contribute to buyers' costs. Now, very important, and I hear this from lenders, especially like we listened to Logan Motoshami on Housing Wire. Very important that you define, if you're going to throw $25,000, say, at buyer's closing costs, you have to say that this is for a rate buy down, because guess what will happen if you don't? It's going to go right to all those junk fees. because you didn't specify. You just said towards buyer's closing costs. It will absolutely be eaten up by junk fees. So that's a minor point, but an important point. If you're going to use these strategies, you got to know about this stuff. So
Julie, we've had a lot of requests and we're working on this just so for those of you guys who are, by the way, if you want to message Julie and I, give us an idea for a show, more of this, less of that, whatever. We love your feedback. Message us over at Tim and Julie Harris. That's on Instagram. Just go to Tim and Julie Harris and you can send us some, you guys know how to do it. So a lot of people are wanting to know what the junk fees are that are in a mortgage payment and also showing up on the closing documents that are arguably just, like I said, straight up junk fees. And we're working on that. But I have to tell you, they are very hard to pick out. Like, for example, again, because we just have come to accept the fact that title insurance costs what title insurance costs. Title insurance has 90% markup. We've just come to accept the fact that there's PMI, private mortgage insurance. Do you guys realize what a cash cow private mortgage insurance is? I mean, holy crap. If you want to get into a business, start a PMI company.
And have you ever known anybody who's actually had to use that insurance?
No. And who are you insuring? Yeah.
In thousands of our own transactions and all of our coaching clients, I have zero examples of anybody using that.
Exactly. So there's so many people that are feeding out the housing trough and more. Okay. So back in 2009, before Fannie and Freddie were essentially socialized when they went into conservatorship, the amount of garbage fees were far less. So as soon as it got socialized, all these other little entities started coming to we need this fee and this fee and this fee, and started out at $25 or $10, and now it's $250. And nobody questions it. No one stops to say, what the hell is that for? And even if you did question it and you did have an issue with it, what are you going to do? Not close? You guys see, there's a lot of garbage in all this process that is all going to be sorted through. But the resistance from the people that are feeding at the trough is going to be not insurmountable. It's going to be palatable. So look for it. And when you see somebody getting all emotionally driven by, we have to keep government social. We have to keep Fannie and Freddie in control of the government. We have to do this, do the other things. Do what I suggested. Do some homework on who they are. Do some homework on if they're sitting on any boards. Do some homework on all these things. And you're going to find it's because they're one of the folks, without exception. I've literally found no exception to what I'm saying when Julie and I have been researching this over the last 3 years. I have not found a single exception of anybody that is against Fannie and Freddie going back to the public markets and no longer being exclusively in the control of the government. I have not found a single person that's against that did not have a dog in the fight. And I think that's interesting. You guys got to start thinking about what is best for housing, and what's best for housing is we get the payments down. And we just given you a lot of great ways to do it through different interest rate mechanisms. But also I was trying to give you a little bit of macro information too, so you guys are feeling motivated and excited about the huge changes that are coming. Be very supportive of what the government's trying to do or will be doing with housing, because it is going to have a massive effect, not just on your pocketbook, but on society. Because when more people own homes, I mean, it's so sad that the average age of a home first-time buyer now is 38. Okay, yeah. It's 38 because payments have gotten too high, interest rates have gotten too high, junk fees have gotten too high. If you want to know where discontent comes from, there was a survey that was done amongst union workers. What their number one issue was, the one thing that they wish they could change about, being Americans. Guess what it was? Their lack of ability to buy a home. I think that's tragic. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's because too many greedy people have gotten in on the whole idea that housing could create multiple streams of, passive income for them through all these different little widgets. And all of that's going to be purged. And it's already starting to happen. Look, here's another thing. What did they come out with? This is my favorite one. Credit reporting. Another thing that you really got to think about, who are the credit reporting agencies' customers? They're not you, Mr. Consumer. They're the people that issue you credit. Is there an incentive for the people that are issuing you a credit to charge you more interest or higher interest rates or lower interest rates? Higher interest rates. So is there an incentive for the credit reporting agencies whose primary customer are the people that are issuing credit to have people have lower credit scores or higher credit scores, considering their customers benefit more when the interest rates are higher because your credit score is lower? Bunch of BS, isn't it?
And proven by the fact that it's virtually impossible for you to control your credit score. It's your credit score. How complicated have they made it to even, can anybody listening tell me what the exact mixture is of your credit score? Because it's not what you think. I'm kind of a credit crazy person. I study this because I think it's so corrupt, and it's such a game. And everybody thinks that, you just make your payments on time, your credit's going to go up. Well, that's part of it, but it's only like 22% of your score. I remember finding this out when we were applying for, when in one of our moves, they said, well, your credit would be higher if you didn't own so many homes. Like, does that make any sense whatsoever?
So in other words, if you guys weren't rich, we would feel more comfortable. It's because we didn't fit inside their algorithm. That's all
No,
it
you
was.
know what they said? We had maybe half of them paid off at that point, and they said because you have more than one mortgage that you could default on. And I said, well, doesn't the fact that I've had them on automatic draft for a decade prove otherwise? And they're like, no, because you still owe a balance you could default on
You
more
guys
than
get
one.
it. It's Julie said it. It's a scam. It just
It's a
is.
total
It's
scam.
corrupt. And so what happened? FHFA, uh, uh, Pulte, he basically got rid of the FICO credit scoring system. And
Well,
look
it's
how
not
much,
completely gotten rid of. He's added something in addition to it.
right. So now here's what was really shocking. This whole system's so much crap. So they did a little analysis about how many more people would be able to qualify for a mortgage if they stopped using FICO. Remember, I just told you about interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I don't remember the number. I think it was 30,000 more people a year, or it may have been, I don't think it was
Something
more.
huge.
It may be 300,000. It had a three in it. I don't remember. But because Pulte made it so Fannie and Freddie, which basically controls the mortgage market, can now use something other than FICO for assessing people's credit.
Mm-hmm.
Tens of millions of people, let's say, are now going to be, well, over time, are going to be able to qualify for a mortgage that wouldn't otherwise been able to qualify for a mortgage.
Yep.
This is the crap I'm talking about that we're finally seeing somebody take a hard look at and fix. Be excited.
I've got one more that I'm watching that I hope there's been some chatter in the mortgage world about this. Why is it that the debt to income ratios are exactly the same as they've been for 60 years? When you know that your payment's going to be your contribution towards your house payment is naturally going to be higher because prices have all gone up. So why do you still have to have a 28% ratio? That doesn't make any sense. And still, and so how many people are either being priced out of the mortgage market or not qualifying in the first place
Well,
because they can't meet the ratios?
so this is full circle, and this Julie and I are being wonks right now. Just bear with us
We could go on, but
because it's interesting. So what's going to happen when Fannie Freddie come out of conservatorship and they're publicly traded companies again? You're going to see more. J.P. Morgan already said they're going to do it. I'm sure a lot of other investment banks are as well. They're going to become competitors for Fannie and Freddie, which means they're going to be able to offer more products than what Fannie and Freddie offer, which is going to force Fannie and Freddie to be more competitive, more mortgages, more transactional volume. Because obviously the government has no competition right now. I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit burned out on the DMV experience of having when it comes to helping people get mortgages. It's onerous, it's ridiculous, it feels wrong, and we're going to see it all change. So you are in the right place at the right time. No matter what side of the political aisle you're on, be pro housing, be pro return of the American dream, be pro people being able to afford a home. That's where it all starts and stops with most of the ills that, frankly, the country has. When people own a piece of housing, when they own their own home, especially when they're younger than they are now, what's going to happen? They're going to establish roots, and it's been proven over and over again. A community of owners is always a safer environment to live in than a community of renters. Not me saying it, just as a fact. Schools are better, the environment's better, all the things will return to the American dream. And you'll also see an erosion of discontent. And that discontent is allowing a lot of socialistic Marxist ideas to creep in. That's what's happening around the country because people are feeling disillusioned with feeling like they've been dealt out of the American dream. That's all going to return. And we're starting to see it. And I am unbelievably excited to be in the real estate industry right now at this point in history, because what's going to happen next, and it's going to happen fast, is it's going to be just really, truly incredible. Make sure you're thinking like this. Otherwise, you're going to be, oh, interest rates are crap, and I have to wait for the market to come back and interest rates to go lower. Julie?
No, but you know why it's going to come roaring back. Also, everything that you just said, but we also have inventory.
Yeah.
That's a very different scenario than when things heated up during COVID and there was no inventory. It's going to be completely different. The buyers that have been on the sideline will actually have something that they can buy, and they might not still have to compete for it. It's going to be awesome.
If you guys are listening to Julie and I talk today and you are being political in your mind or thinking that we're trying to be political, you are completely missing the point, which means you're going to completely miss the market and you're not going to be of service to your, chosen folks to be of service to, which is buyers and sellers. Set aside your politics, listen, look, and do your own homework on what we've been sharing with you. Listen to our past podcasts. We did one of our best series probably in a year, maybe 2 years, where we said make housing great again. If you can't, the easy button is just Google make housing great again. And we're all over the pages for having written about it because a lot of other people republished it. Listen to the last show because every time we republish it, we're adding more points. We need to update that, Julie.
Yep.
But guys, look, be excited. Tomorrow is Freeform Friday. So we're going to have a lot of fun on tomorrow's podcast. Make sure you listen. In the meantime, thank you for keeping this the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. We're consistently top 50 in the United States, and we really sincerely appreciate your continued support. Have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow. So thank you for having watched this video. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. And don't forget to hit that like button, leave your comments and questions below, and we will get right back with you.
Thank you for watching this video. And remember to watch the next one. You're going to love that one.